I'm starting with an apology. I do not speak Spanish. I'm from South Africa. I've been colonized by English people, and they even took away our tongue, and we couldn't even speak our own languages. But I come all the way from South Africa, and I hope that you will understand what we're trying to do here this evening. Maybe one of you could take me to Venezuela so I can learn Spanish. That'd be a very good idea. Welcome to Trinity Church, and welcome to this service. We're going to pay homage to a very great man, and I've come to learn about him just recently, and definitely is one of those that have now been raised up to the level of being my hero as well. I'm sure a hero for you. I think Venezuela lost a great man, and it was a terrible loss when he died. So we're going to celebrate his birth. It's a fun occasion, I think. Celebrating because I don't believe that those who die go far away from us. They are still within our hearts. That's how far they are from us. And they're just a thought away. You just have to think, and the person is right next to you. So we're going to celebrate President Chavez, and we're going to pray for him, pray for those of us who are left behind in every situation that we are in. I think we are facing the same dynamics of troubles all over, and we need to pray for ourselves, and definitely pray for the country of Venezuela. So welcome to Trinity Church, and we're going to offer communion. This church offers communion to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, where you go, what you do, whether you're baptized or not baptized. Communion will be offered. It's one way, a symbolic way of uniting with each other, and definitely uniting very strongly with those who have died. So I'm going to go hand over to Consul Rodriguez, and he's going to pick up what I've left out. So.
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for being here, my friends. My name is Jesus Rodriguez. I'm the Consul General from Venezuela. And first of all, I wanna thank everyone that is here in this moment that we are somehow celebrating the legacy of Hugo Chavez after 2 years from his departure. So that's the first thing that I want to say. But I also, before starting to talk, I want to ask anyone that speaks Spanish, si hay alguien que no habla inglés, se pudiese sentar del lado de acá izquierdo de la sala, que vamos a poner a alguien para que le traduzca. So I'm basically asking those ones that do not speak Spanish, English, that if they don't speak Spanish, they can see it in this side of the church, because we can put someone to help them translate what we're going to say. In that way, we will avoid timing. So if you want to do that, feel free, let me know, and I'll send someone to that side to help you with the translation. I'm going to first letting you know what we have planned for today. Basically, we are going to have a little bit of music with a good group of musicians, Ecuadorian musicians from the Albany Park Art Festival in La Colmena, which is a cultural organization that has been helping us for years, and we have been working with them for years. So I thank you for their support, and they are always there for us. And then we're going to bring some friends that are going to say a few words, close friends from the consulate that are going to say a few words about Hugo Chavez. And then we're going to start with the religious service. And at the end, of course, I'm going to open the microphones to people to say a few words if they want about Hugo Chavez, what they miss about Hugo Chavez, and what they think about current events in Venezuela. So, saying that, I want to just say a few things to avoid taking more time from you. Basically, I want to say that Chavez's legacy is very related to social consciousness. I mean, Venezuelan people has been dramatically changed since Chavez took power. I mean, Venezuelans decades ago were seen like beauty contest people, oil, and things like that. And right now, the level of political consciousness of our people has risen to levels that I never thought that we were going to have. So I believe that Chavez helped us to have those levels of political consciousness in Venezuela, the levels that we have right now. And it doesn't matter from what side of the political spectrum you are. You might hate Chavez or you might love Chavez, but even in the cases of the people that hate Chavez, they are participating in politics, and that's good for democracy also. So I believe that that's important. Of course, one of the most important legacies that he left us was the levels of communal organizations, the communal councils, the communes in Venezuela. I believe that that's the main energy, the engine that keeps the Bolivarian revolution alive. So I believe that that's important because a lot of people say that after Chavez said things were going to fall down in Venezuela, that Chavismo was going to disappear, and what is happening is the contrary. So I want to let you know that, of course, another of his legacy was the legacy of eradication of poverty. I mean, for the first time ever in Venezuelan history, we have a president that cares about the poor people, that really work and do something concrete to get people out of poverty. And no one can deny that, even the people that oppose politically our government and Chavez. So I believe that that's important. And he also raised the level of patriotism, but not the chauvinistic patriotism. He raised the level of patriotism among Venezuela, but the Latin American patriotism. And I believe that that's very important because we are not those kind of patriots that only think about our country and believe that the other countries are less than us or something like that. It's in the contrary. He told us to understand that we are equals, that we are brothers, especially Latin American countries. And that's a complete change in what we had before Chavez. So I believe that that's very important. And of course, within that in Latin Americanism that he told us to have, he promoted integrational schemes in the continent like UNASUR, ALBA. He made us join Mercosur. So he was a real believer in the unity of Latin America and also a really believer in the unity of all the poors all over the world. And I believe that that's why his message transcends Latin America. And right now you can see it in people even maybe in Greece or in Spain, in which we have very progressive people right now taking power or threatening to take power. So threatening some people, of course, and making happy others to take power. So basically, that's what I wanted to say about Hugo Chavez. I also want to let you know that we in Venezuela are right now facing a very strong attack from abroad, and I want to let you know that it's important for us to have your support, your solidarity. It's important the work that our friends, the friends of Venezuela here in the US do here, because it helps us in the soul. You know what I mean? I mean, when you see that there's someone that cares for you, that is not from your country, and go to the street, like some friends yesterday went to the streets in the street of Chicago to leave pamphlets and say information about the foreign intervention in Venezuela. I believe that information help our own people in Venezuela to feel that we are not alone, that we are part of a bigger scene, and that's important. And right now, I wanna also, I first of all wanna thank all of you for being here, but I wanna particularly salute the presence of the Consul General from the Dominican Republic and her deputy counsel that is here. I want to thank, of course, the people, Zanoni Cuesta from the Albany Park Art Festival, Rosa Masakisa she was the speaker in an event that we organized yesterday, and it was a very nice event about Buen Vivir. And of course, I want to thank, and I want to ask them to come here and to say a few words. A few friends that has been very close to the consulate also. I'm going to name them, and I'm going to then ask them to come to the stand and say a few words about Hugo Chavez and the Bolivarian Revolution. And those are Neil Resnikov from the M19 Anti-War Coalition. We have Stan Smith from the Allah Solidarity Committee. We have Abel Mohammed from the Nation of Islam. We have Felix Masu, professor and a good friend from DePaul University. We have Jose Lopez from the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, which is a rock star around here. We have Claire Hopner from the Midwest Workers Associations that are very close friends to us and instrumental in organizing this activity and tons of activity for years. And that's a big help that we have here in Chicago. We want to thank Vicky Cervantes from La Voz de Abajo, which is another organization that works with Central American human rights that is always close to us. And we want to thank the president of John Beecham from the Answer Coalition and the Party for Socialist Liberation. So I'm going to ask them in that order. I can remind them later about the order, to come here and to say a few words about Venezuela and Hugo Chavez. So the first in the list is our good friend Neil Resnikov.
So the loss 2 years ago, yesterday, of the democratically elected president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, was a terrible loss. But the people of Venezuela and the people here in the U.S. have been inspired by his fighting spirit for freedom and democracy to go forward. What are some of the things we can learn from that fight? And what can we apply right here in Chicago? The actions of Hugo Chavez were clearly for social justice and the well-being of the Venezuelan people, and of all people. This meant, first and foremost, a struggle against U.S. imperialism and against the allies of U.S. imperialism. A struggle against domination by the U.S. corporations and their government. We know that this was a struggle which was just begun under the leadership of Hugo Chavez. We know this struggle has to be waged over and over again, and we can see that with the continuing attempts by the U.S. last year and then just 3 weeks ago to overthrow the democratically elected government of Venezuela. What were some of the key contributions of Hugo Chavez to the anti-imperialist struggle? One is that Chavez, as leader of the Bolivarian Revolution and the leader of the anti-imperialist movement for peace in Venezuela, made a great contribution to the right of self-determination of the peoples of Latin America and the Caribbean by fighting for political sovereignty, fighting for economic sovereignty, fighting for energy sovereignty, and against imperialist domination and interference. The Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our Americas, and that's ALBA, today has 8 member nations. ALBA stands as a bloc against imperialist interference in the people's affairs, interference through the neoliberal free trade agreements, which destroy the social and natural environments and exploit the human and natural resources of countries for the profits of a few. Petrocaribe, founded in 2005, enables various Caribbean countries to purchase oil from Venezuela on conditions of preferential payment at a fraction of the market value, with any remaining costs converted into long-term, low-interest loans and other benefits to the countries. Private oil monopolies are cut out as intermediaries, and this facilitates the greater sovereignty over the national economies. Some other contributions are the Bank of the South, the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, the Union of South American Nations, and more. These are all nation-building projects which have benefited the peoples of all the Americas and the Caribbean. They testified to Chavez's great desire to work with the peoples of the region, to gain tools, to develop and defend their independence and their strength and peace. They testified to Chavez's desire to end imperialist domination, to end the stranglehold of the International Monetary Fund, of the World Bank, and the other agents of U.S. monopoly capital. And then within Venezuela, as Consul Rodriguez has mentioned, Chavez led the way to the eradication of abject poverty, of illiteracy, of homelessness, of joblessness, and this was done largely by increasing the empowerment of the people. The imperialist corporations in the U.S. have been opposing this, and so a defense of these gains by the Venezuelan people and opposition to U.S. interference to these gains is an important part of the anti-imperialist struggle. The responsibility of we Americans here today and other people living in the U.S. is to do all we can to stop the bloody hands of U.S. imperialism everywhere in the world, as Chavez did, such as when he opposed the U.S. attacks on Libya. And here are a couple of things we could do. We need to spread the truth about what the U.S. is doing to interfere in Venezuela, especially since this is distorted by the corporate media. And we need to let people know what the Venezuelan people have been doing to strengthen their own independence and well-being and unite the countries of Latin America to resist the interference of U.S. power around the world. Long live Hugo Chavez.
Long live Hugo Chavez.
Hold back the bloody hands of U.S. imperialism here and abroad.
Hold back the bloody hands of U.S. imperialism here and abroad.
I apologize because I forgot about the music. So now we're going to have the music, and then we're going to start with the program. So we're going to have Eva Centales and the guitarist, Mr. Hugo, playing right now.
Good evening. The songs that we are going to perform are Latin American, and I hope that you enjoy with us. Thank you. Salgo a caminar por la cintura cósmica del sur, piso en la región más vegetal del tiempo y de la luz. Siento al caminar toda la piel de América en mi piel, y onde en mi sangre un río que libera pastor su rebaño, y así como todo cambia, que yo cambie no es extraño. Cambia el más fino brillante, de mano en mano su brillo, cambia el nido el pajarillo, cambia el sentir de un amante, cambia el rumbo el caminante, aunque esto le cause daño. Y así como todo cambia, que yo cambie no es extraño. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia el sol en su carrera cuando la noche subsiste, cambia la planta y se viste de verde en la primavera, cambia el pelaje la fiera, cambia el cabello el anciano, y así como todo cambia, que yo cambie no es extraño. Pero no cambia mi amor, por más lejos que me encuentre, ni el recuerdo ni el dolor de mi pueblo y de mi gente. Y lo que cambió ayer tendrá que cambiar mañana, así como cambio yo en esta tierra lejana. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia, todo cambia. Cambia, todo cambia. Pero no cambia mi amor, por más lejos que me encuentre, ni el recuerdo ni el dolor de mi pueblo y de mi gente. Y lo que cambió ayer tendrá que cambiar mañana, así como cambio yo en esta tierra lejana. Cambia, todo cambia. 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 Cambia, Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio dos luceros que cuando los abro perfecto distingo lo negro del blanco, y en el alto cielo su fondo estrellado, y en las multitudes el hombre que yo amo. Gracias a la vida noche y día, grillos y canarios, martinos, turbinas, ladrillos, chubascos y la voz tan tierna de mi bien amado. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado el sonido y el abecedario, como las palabras que pienso y declamo. Madre, amigo, hermano y luz alumbrando la ruta del alma del que estoy amando. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la marcha de mis pies cansados, con ellos anduve ciudades y charcos, playas y desiertos, montañas y llanos, en la casa tuya, tu calle y tu patio. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me dio el corazón que agita su marco cuando miro el fruto del cerebro humano, cuando miro el bueno tan lejos del malo, cuando miro el fondo de tus ojos claros. Gracias a la vida que me ha dado tanto, me ha dado la risa y me ha dado el llanto. Así yo distingo dicha de quebranto, los dos materiales que forman mi canto, y el canto de ustedes que es el mismo canto, y el canto de todos que es mi propio canto. Gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida, gracias a la vida. Gracias.
That's it for Chavez. I will ask Stan Smith. I want to start calling all the speakers, and I want to ask you, I know that it's not polite to be a little bit brief, because we are going to affect the rest of the event. So Stan Smith is our next speaker.
Thank you for inviting me to speak. I had a speech I was going to read, but then I was listening to some of Evo Morales talking about Hugo Chavez, and since this is not in English, I thought I should translate some of what he had to say and read it to you. This is what he said yesterday. He said, 2 years ago, personally, I lived in a very difficult time at the international level with the loss of compañero Hugo Chavez, the worst time in my 9 years as president. He said, this brother had taught us to lose our fear of the empire. Chavez was the light that showed us the path to sovereignty and dignity for the Latin American people. Chavez is a great brother compañero in the fight against imperialism, a soldier of the Gran Patria, a human being in solidarity with the poor and the very supportive of Bolivia. said that the day that Chavez died, he felt like he was an orphan from the political point of view. He said the best tribute to Hugo Chavez is to continue to be anti-imperialist, to keep practicing solidarity, and strengthen the democratic revolutions in Latin America. In this process of democratic liberation that was headed by Fidel Castro 50 years ago, he says, now, in 2015, we have many presidents that continue to make the progress towards liberation. Now I'll read what he said the day that Hugo Chavez died. I should say that I was in Bolivia when he was re-elected, which he made it deliberately on Columbus Day, which he dedicated his victory to Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro and all the people in the world fighting imperialism. I was also there again when he was re-inaugurated in January. This is what he said 2 years ago. Recognizing the death of our compañero Hugo Chavez Frias, my brother, a man of solidarity, a revolutionary comrade, a Latin American who fought for his country, for the Patria Grande, as did Simón Bolívar, a compañero who gave his whole life for the liberation of the Venezuelan people, for the people of Latin America, and for all the anti-imperialists and anti-capitalists of the world. It hurts, but I want to say to the people who accompanied Hugo Chavez, strength, courage, more unity than ever for this process of liberation, not only for the Venezuelan people, but for all the peoples of Latin America, must continue. Aside from the physical loss, we feel, Hugo Chavez Frias is more alive than ever, and Hugo Chavez continues to be the inspiration for the peoples who continue fighting for their liberation. Chavez is forever present in all parts of the world and all the different social sectors and groups. Chavez is always accompanying us. He's always with us in this great process after so many years of subjugation, of domination, and especially the looting of our countries. These are difficult moments for those of us who share the great ideas of liberation of our compañero Hugo Chavez Frias. It hurts a lot to say that the oligarchical groups, the U.S. empire, do not even respect an ill person, or a people who suffered for their comandante. This should serve as an experience not only for the Venezuelan people, Bolivians, but all the peoples of the world who fight against oligarchy, against the U.S. empire. The oligarchies in the U.S. empire, this brings happiness to them when the people who fight for their dignity, for their liberation, who work for equality, suffer. But that's not important. What is important that we are united, that we fight for our liberation, as compañero Hugo Chavez fought. I want to say to the Venezuelan people, unity and strength are the best homage to Hugo Chavez Frias. Therefore, I want to say to the Venezuelan people, unity in our struggle for liberation, unity in working for the equality of the people of the world. I want to say, sisters and brothers, in the name of the Bolivian people, this profound feeling that we have for our brother Hugo Chavez, may he rest in peace, and especially for his family, and for that revolutionary people, we are here to accompany you through these difficult times. I want to say to the Venezuelan people, stay strong, stay committed, and besides that, much, much unity. That is the greatest homage to Hugo Chavez. Unity for the dignity of the people, much unity for the struggle for liberation of the peoples of Latin America and all the anti-imperialist people of the world who fight for their liberation. And also, if you know Spanish, it's also on YouTube if you want to watch it. So thank you.
Now we have Abel Muhammad from the Nation of Islam.
En el nombre de Allah, el benéfico y misericordioso. In the name of Allah, the beneficent, the merciful, I bear witness there is no God but God. We call him by many names. In Arabic, we say Allah. In English, we say God. En español decimos Dios o el Señor. In otras lenguas, in other languages, we would call him Jehovah or Elohim. Our brothers from the Caribbean say Jah. And our indigenous forefathers may refer to them as the Creator or Grandfather, depending on our tradition. Different languages, different words, but we're all referring to the same God. I'm here today on behalf of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam, and I wanted to just share some words from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on our great brother, who's, well, we don't speak of those as dead. We just say he's gone out of view, but he's still with us. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that Hugo Chavez was a great, great patriarch and a great servant of the masses of the people. He was so strong in his desire for the masses of the people of Venezuela to partake of the wealth of Venezuela that he earned the wrath of the oligarchs who ruled Venezuela and the government of the United States of America and others who seem to be negative whenever somebody rises for the masses of the poor of the nations. Hugo Chavez is a man that comes once, maybe every 100 years. But I would like to say to the people of Venezuela and to all of those who benefited from the charitable behavior of President Hugo Chavez, there's a verse in the Quran that goes like this: "Speak not of those who die or are slain in the way of God as dead. They are alive, but you perceive not." Those who work to attempt what the Quran calls the uphill road, to free a slave, to raise a man who is languishing in the dust, that's the uphill road. And Hugo Chavez traveled that road and lifted the poor of his nation, sharing the oil wealth of that nation with the poor, with those who were locked out, with those who were the servant class for the rich. The poor in Central America need to be raised. The poor of the Caribbean, the poor of America, the poor of Africa, the poor of the world need to be raised, for it is on the backs of the poor that the rich have become so powerful. So whenever God raises somebody that speaks to the poor and raises the consciousness of the poor, the governments that have sucked the life of the poor hate such a man. And unfortunately, sometimes they are so powerful, they control the media and they use the media to demonize a strong black and brown people who work for the mass of the poor. If there's anything, well, you can clap for that. I want to just say this. Personally, I love Hugo Chavez because he looks like me in terms of my skin. Growing up in America, I didn't have a lot of people who looked like me that I could look up to. And to see a man in front of us, that's his legacy for us personally, the next generation, his strength. And if we want to have the name of Hugo Chavez on our lips and in our hearts, we can't say we love him and then in a time like this, be weak. His strength, despite whatever they threatened with him with, whatever they accused him of, he stood for the poor and his people. And if we want to say we love him and are with him, then what we have to carry forward with is the strength that he showed to us in spite of the circumstances. That's why a man like Hugo Chavez, we can never say he died. He's just gone away. He's out of sight, he's out of view, but he's still present. And we feel him, and we need his spirit and his guidance and what he was trying to show us an example more today than ever before. So we're not going to just say it in an empty way. When we say, long live Hugo Chavez, que viva Hugo Chavez, we're not saying it like a wish. We're stating it as a fact because in a day like this, if we're going to be the people that we want to be and that the world deserves, and we want to create the type of society that is needed, then the spirit of Hugo Chavez is what's going to be what is leading us and what is helping to guide us. So I would say from myself, as a Mexican born in America, as a Muslim member of the Nation of Islam, as a human being from amongst the poor and the suffering of the world, que viva Hugo Chavez.
Felix Masuri, please.
Thank you, Jesus. I'm going to keep to the 2 minutes, as I was instructed, so let me. I just want to say that it's amazing that 2 years have passed since Hugo Chavez lost his battle to cancer. And I remember 2 years ago, we had a memorial for him, the day that he died, on the 5th, at Calle Cisueño in Pilsen. We were all very sad. And to this day, you remember that since he's no longer with us, it's kind of tragic. And of course, it's tragic because a young man with such vision, such courage, to die so young after doing so much is really unfortunate. As it has already been said here many times, he left a tremendous legacy that we should all look up to. So that's why when I get saddened by the fact that he's no longer with us, I think about his legacy and what he did in 14 years in government. I mean, just he was incredible, all the things that he was able to do. First and foremost, of course, he carried on the mission to uphold the poor, to eliminate poverty in Venezuela, to bring health care to every corner of the country, not only of the country, in other parts of the world too, and also education. So those things he did just as part of his whole zeal. And then you start thinking back at what he did institutionally outside of Venezuela and further out to the rest of the region. Already spoken here about all the institutions that he helped create and carry forth and inspire. ALBA, of course, in 2004 was a major accomplishment in Latin American political history. No one had ever unified so many countries in Latin America as he did. Petrocaribe followed a year later, and of course that's a huge contribution to all the poor nations of Latin America, including the nations I come from the Caribbean, to be able to have affordable petroleum like never before. And that is also tremendous. He was criticized a lot for giving away the resources of Venezuela, and he did it with great pleasure. He said, "We're not giving it away, we're just sharing it." And that's no one had ever done that before, and that was something that we will ever be grateful to him. UNASUR, and of course CELAC, especially in 2011, CELAC just had its second Congress, and it keeps going. That's once more. I know that many times he has been compared to Simón Bolívar, who had the dream of unifying Latin America. Many people criticize that also because you don't compare yourself to Simón Bolívar, but he sure came close. Obviously much closer than Bolívar. Unfortunately, Bolívar died, as we know, very frustrated because he could not bring that unity. Different times, different moments, and Chavez was trying to do that. I think the other thing that is important to remember, and I do so as a historian especially, that Hugo Chavez, at least in my knowledge, is the only Latin American president to survive a full-fledged military coup. No one has done that. That in itself is a hell of an accomplishment for my guy. When I saw that, I could not believe it, that this coup only lasted 2 hours. And why? And the question is, how come he's the only one who survived it? Well, obviously, it's a tremendous support that he enjoyed both in Venezuela, Latin America, and other parts of the world, who immediately responded to that attack on his government. So, as has been said already, he left us quite a legacy. And a legacy that now it is our turn to continue preserving that legacy and to continue advancing what he had, his vision, and to continue working towards a better future. So as Chavez is not dead, he actually lives and will live forever. So Chavez vive, la lucha sigue. Thank you.
7 minutes, yes. Now, Jose Lopez from the Puerto Rico Cultural Center.
Let me say that I am obviously honored to be here. Honored because when Bolivar died, it is said that he said he will rise every 100 years when the people will need him. It took almost 200 years to have another Bolivar. And I would share the same view that Felix has shared with you, that Chavez was indeed the greatest Bolivarian that lived in this century and perhaps since Simon Bolivar. I want to say this as a Puerto Rican. Simon Bolivar left Haiti in 1816, stopped on the island of Vieques, and wrote a wonderful letter, a letter to a Jamaican gentleman in which he proposed for the first time the Confederation of the Antilles. And it was in that spirit that obviously people like Duarte in the Dominican Republic, Martí in Cuba, Betances in Puerto Rico, obviously lived with that idea. But it was really in that idea of creating, with the oil of Venezuela, a Caribbean basin economic initiative that obviously Hugo Chavez made it almost a reality. And just a few weeks ago, on the 28th of January, the birth of Jose Marti, while CELAC was being, obviously was in session, the president of Venezuela, President Maduro, made an incredible speech that for the first time in Latin America, a leader of Latin America would speak to all the heads of states of Latin America and the Caribbean and raise the case of Puerto Rico. He spoke about the need of Puerto Rico to sit among the nations of the Caribbean and Latin America. He also spoke about the need for all of Latin America and all the Latin American leaders to raise their voice in support of the release of my brother, Oscar Lopez Rivera. And he said, it just like this. I remember when I was young and Nelson Mandela was considered a terrorist. And then Nelson Mandela became one of the greatest liberators of the 20th century. And he says, just as the world had Nelson Mandela, Puerto Rico has its Nelson Mandela in Oscar Lopez Rivera, and Latin America claims for the release of its Mandela. And so it's in that spirit, in that legacy, that obviously Chavez set into motion that Maduro has so well articulated. And it's in that spirit that I come here tonight with a brother, Luis Rosa, who was 20 years in prison as a political prisoner, and join in this celebration of Hugo Chavez's life, his legacy, and obviously a man that took almost 200 years to bring back Simon Bolivar in our Americas. Thank you.
And I want to highlight that Jose says about the commitment not only from Maduro, from Chavez, but the legacy of Chavez that has inspired Maduro in order to keep the cause of the Puerto Rican independence alive, and of course the liberation of Oscar Lopez, sorry. So now we have Claire Hope.
We gather here to pay tribute in words and deeds to a world-class leader and internationalist, Hugo Chavez, leader of the Bolivarian Revolution and elected president of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. As president, he inherited a country in economic crisis and immense poverty, which had long been subject to U.S. imperialism. He started by issuing a general order to his officers: go to the poor barrios, your enemy is hunger. And over 60,000 soldiers helped to build social programs across the country, creating food markets, delivering food in poor and rural areas, and more. He inspired a constituent assembly to establish a new constitution guaranteeing rights and establishing the principle of a government and people working together for social and economic development of the nation, including redistribution of the oil industry profits to meet the needs of the people. The new constitution was ratified by nationwide referendum. In response, the former ruling elite attempted a coup with US government backing. However, millions demanded their president to be released and returned, and loyal members of the military rescued and returned him. Then the higher echelons of PDVSA attempted to sabotage the oil industry, upon which the country's economy depends. And President Chavez had promoted the necessity for all to fight to implement the Constitution, including the necessity to build organization and cultivate leadership among the people. And it was the strength of organization that led to the defeat of the sabotage. And that strength, which built missions to address the people's needs, which just a couple of them are from 8,000 free health care centers to eliminating illiteracy, to building and distributing over 20,000 new homes, to many, many more accomplishments. A number of other speakers have spoken of how Hugo Chavez, as a world-class leader, led the way in building alliances with other nations in Latin America, based on principles of solidarity and cooperation and mutual support and sustainability. Since 2005, CITGO, first inspired under Chavez's leadership, helped almost 2 million people here in this country with gallons of heating oil to families, providing 500,000 compact fluorescent lights, helping tens of thousands of people to lower their energy costs and reducing the impact of energy demands on the planet. At a speech of the UN in 2005, President Chavez stated, "We will fight for Venezuela, for Latin American integration in the world. We reaffirm our infinite faith in humankind. We are thirsty for peace and justice in order to survive as a species. Simón Bolívar, founding father of our country and guide of our revolution, swore to never allow his hands to be idle or his soul to rest until he had broken the shackles which bound us to the empire. Now is the time to not allow our hands to be idle or our souls to rest until we save humanity." The most fitting tribute we can pay to Comandante Hugo Chavez is to learn from his many, many examples and to apply those lessons to the tasks we have that lie before us here in our own land. And through that also provide hope to the people of the world and to transform reality in the interest of the people here, starting with those at the bottom, with determination and perseverance as he demonstrated until his last breath.
We have Vicky Cervantes from La Voz de los de Abajo.
Well, I'm kind of throwing out everything I was going to say because when I was listening to the singing, the line in one of the songs, "Mi canto, que el canto de todos, que es el mismo canto," my song, the song of everyone, and it's all the same song, really struck me that that's emblematic of Comandante Presidente Hugo Chavez and of all of us in all of our movements. My organization is an organization with two hearts in many ways. One heart is planted here in the United States, where we're a part of all the suffering and struggles and privileges that exist in this country. And the other heart is planted in Central America, where we've been working in Honduras for many years. And the people in Honduras paid the price for looking south at the examples that everyone else has laid out so eloquently of what Chavez proposed for the poor and for the working people in a military coup in June of 2009. They continue to pay the price. And yet they continue also to be moved by that same song. And I think that when I think of Hugo Chavez, one thing I think of is not only fearless brave defiance, but joyous, smiling defiance of imperialism, of all the oligarchs. And this smiling, joyous defiance is what I've seen in Honduras, in the streets, facing the troops, in light of the death squads. And it's a defiance that I've seen here in our streets as well, but not enough. So I think the challenge that we face, if we really want to commemorate Hugo Chavez, is to take that song and that spirit of joyous, fearless defiance in all the streets, all over all the Americas.
Now, John Beecham from Answer Police.
My name is John Beecham. I'm the coordinator of the Answer Coalition here in Chicago. I'm also from the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and do a little bit of work with the National Committee to Free the Cuban Five. You know, for us, there's really no, even though Washington would like to impose it, there's no separation between us and the people of Venezuela and the people of Latin America. For us, Hugo Chavez was president of Venezuela, but he was also a leader in the international struggle on behalf of the poor, on behalf of the working class, on behalf of the fighters, the liberators, the people in the street struggling for justice. And so when we think about what's happened in Venezuela and what's happened in Latin America, we want to acknowledge the significance of the tremendous forward progress that has happened there. And why it's so significant is when we look around the world today, we don't see much forward progress. And when we do have forward progress, as revolutionaries, as fighters for justice, we need to go all out in defense of that progress. And right now, it is clear that the United States has Venezuela in their sights. It is without a doubt, there's no way that the coup that was just attempted in Venezuela was not given the go-ahead in Washington, was not backed by Washington, and Washington wasn't ready, and the media here too, to go all out to back the coup. So there is nothing that is more important for us, or it's of the utmost importance, to defend Venezuela right now, to defend the Bolivarian Revolution, and to say unequivocally, here, everywhere, but in the streets with our banners and our signs, hands off Venezuela. Venezuela is the people's. Washington, you can't have Venezuela. The oligarchs of Latin America, you cannot have Venezuela. And whatever we can do to build that kind of movement here in the United States, the Answer Coalition, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, are committed to doing so. What Hugo Chavez represents to me is that it's correct to stand up. It is correct, always correct, to fight. International solidarity is correct. Socialism is a concrete answer to the people's suffering and to the people's needs. Socialism standing up on behalf of the poor and on behalf of workers and on behalf of countries struggling against U.S. imperialism is still and remains a powerful path to fighting U.S. imperialism, to fighting the oligarchs, and to fighting the dangers, the very serious dangers of capitalism, which is headquartered right here. And that's why we're going to continue to do everything we can to bring that kind of support to Venezuela and all of Latin America. To build the kind of movement where one day, Hugo Chavez's picture is going to be in classrooms all across the country, right here in the belly of the beast. Because one day, the people of the U.S., who have just as much capability as people anywhere in the world of fighting back against their oppressors, will win here in the United States. And when we win here in the United States, when poor and working people stand up for our rights and defeat Washington and defeat Wall Street, defeat Washington's machinations, that will be a tremendous help, an irreplaceable help to not only people of Latin America, but to people all over the world. So what we would say to you, sisters and brothers, is let's keep fighting together. If Hugo Chavez means international solidarity, let's build international solidarity. And where we have zones in the world that have been liberated and are making progress, it behooves us to go all out to defend those zones. Thank you.
I do hope all of you have copies of the service that now follows. During this time of our celebrations, we're going to focus on an aspect in the culture of Hugo Chavez, part of his religious tradition of having communion. I'm sure that he would, as well as the unnamed God would have you participate in that as well. You've been sitting for a long time, so I'd ask you to now stand, and that gives us our bodies a little break. Gets that blood flowing again. There is a collect prayer which I'm going to ask you to say it with me. Almighty God, who is absolute justice before peace, we give you thanks for your servant Hugo Chavez, a son of the soil of Venezuela and leader of the people. We are thankful for the Bolivarian Revolution and his espousing of socialism, the strategy of compassion for those who suffer. We are thankful too for the nationalization and transference of key industries and oil resources for the benefit of all the people, especially the poor. We mourn our brother Hugo's physical absence among us, but rejoice in the presence of his spirit. We pray for grace to empower us to continue the struggle for justice before peace, resolution to passionately participate in shaping personal destiny in a world bent on greed and oppression. We pray for the people of Venezuela that the struggle of its leader, Hugo Chavez, may continue. Could you please be seated? I read to you from a part of the scriptures, the writings in the Christian tradition, a story reputedly told by the man Jesus. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison, or go to visit you. The king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me. They also will answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison, and did not help you? He will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me. Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. A rather castigating piece of scripture found in the Christian Bible. I'm sure it's one of those passages that are very much avoided in our rich traditions. Nelson Mandela had this to say, where poverty exists, there is no true freedom. Where poverty exists, there is no true freedom. Now, President Hugo Chavez, as I've learned, would have been known by the natives of South Africa as Uofana Mhlabati, a true son of the soil, meaning a true son of the people. He, Hugo Chavez, to South Africans would be celebrated as a man of the people. These sentiments, I'm sure, are also the sentiments of the people of Venezuela and those of the Solidarity movement who are pledged to stem the tide of imperial capitalism and preserve democracy. It is the sentiments of the people who continue the struggle for freedom from poverty, repression, and oppression. It is only those who are poor who know the ravages of poverty. And Hugo Chavez was born into poverty. This was his testimony, and this is what gave him meaning and purpose and made him a great human being. Poverty, in hindsight, proves to be a blessing, the driving force of his passion. Remarkably, poverty is a way of opening the heart, to not look away with fear or distrust, to face pain and suffering. Poverty awakens in us our humanity and quickens the human soul to live out life with meaning, moral purpose, direction, and compassion. Hugo Chavez knew poverty. He was a compassionate human being. He knew the meaning and purpose for living was to be attuned to the cries of the poor in Venezuela. He possessed the wisdom of the poor man. When all the middle-class world thought the world's problems could be solved by individuals seeking advice from psychologists and psychiatrists, it is stern that in the social, political, and economic context of Venezuela, the effective answers would come from social analysis of the social, political, economic structures and systems. And using as a tool social analysis, we found the solution for him was pretty simple in Venezuela: change the systems and structures. And when this was done, people were empowered, dignity was restored, and effective strategies began to alleviate suffering. In rallying the masses, the stage was set for a future written from the underside of history, working for the people, for an egalitarian society, empowered to participate in shaping personal destiny. The people work for a society, where there will be no more oppression, no repression, no greed. Now he, like Mandela, who was the only true president we've had in South Africa thus far, he knew where poverty exists, there is no true freedom. Those that serve the poor and die are Christ figures. They die and become signposts for us, pointing a way to what life is all about. The spirit of Hugo Chavez lives on and continues to lead whomsoever. And this spirit births the soul, a new human being for this world, full of compassion for those who suffer the ravages of empire building and foolishness of greedy humans who structure systems that exploit, oppress, and repress. May the struggle continue in Venezuela, and may the struggle continue in every part of the world. Let us come into work that there will be no more war among us. And let us live to see the day of freedom. May God bless Venezuela. May God bless the revolution. And may the spirit of Hugo Chavez continue in us all.